Hey, so I said in the last episode that I wouldn't be repeating this episode what I said in the last episode, about that actually being the first episode chronologically and the first episode being the second episode. Obviously that turned out to be false. Referring, that is, to my not repeating what I said in the last episode, since I just repeated it. And the reason I just repeated it is because the other thing I just mentioned also turned out to be false. Well, not the second episode actually being the first episode chronologically, that's still true. I mean, the part about the first episode actually being the second episode chronologically. Because, of course, it still isn't up yet at the time of this episode. Which means it's really going to be the third episode chronologically, and that this episode is the second. I will have it up before next week, however, so the fourth episode will actually be the fourth episode, I promise. I hope. Welcome to the third episode of my video blog, which chronologically is actually the second episode, etc., etc., you know the drill. One thing I mentioned last week that I didn't say I wouldn't be repeating this episode, by the way, was that I'd been told there was news about a movie I'd been in called The Grover Complex. Grover! Well, turns out the news is that The Grover Complex had been chosen as the feature film for the March program for New Filmmakers Los Angeles, which apparently showcases films by new filmmakers, as one might guess from the name. It's showing there on March 18th, and tickets are $5 if anyone's interested. Oh, and yes, that was the same clip from the trailer that I used for the last episode. I had been kind of hoping to use a different clip from the movie, but unfortunately I haven't received my copy yet. Hopefully by next week. There's a short I was in I also expect to receive a copy of soon called Cone Boy, so hopefully I'll soon be getting both of those and I'll be able to add some of the footage to my reel.
Bleh.
Aside from that, well, this week hasn't been quite as eventful as last week, I guess. I've had a number of auditions, but I'm not going to talk about every audition here in my blog. I'll only mention if I get a role. But there's one role I did get and perform last week, a voiceover for a claymation student film. I don't generally do student films anymore unless I'm really interested in them for some reason. I don't really need them for my resume and I don't really have the time. But this one I did just because it was a voiceover role and I could use more voiceover credits. I play an elf king. Now, Sunday was a comic creators meeting at the Comic Bug.
Sunday of the month.
Now, as I mentioned in the first episode, or will mention in the first episode, the Comic Bug is releasing an anthology later this year, and I'm submitting a story for it. Or I hope to submit a story for it. It hasn't been officially approved yet, although I'm optimistic that it will be. I turned in a script and the rough thumbnails. And now a preview of a few things that are happening next week, both on Wednesday the 3rd, actually. First of all, I'm judging the science fair at the school where I used to teach. This footage is from last year's science fair, since this year's hasn't happened yet. It happens on Wednesday the 3rd. As a side note, for those who didn't know, I used to teach at a school. I taught science and math at the middle school and high school level. Anyway, this should be interesting. I've been back there a few times recently to tutor some students, but still, this time I'll be there for a large part of the day and probably see a lot of people I haven't seen in a while. Anyway, also, Wednesday night, I'm going to be on TV. Spike TV, on a show called 1,000 Ways to Lie. According to the general online schedule, it's on at 10 p.m., and again Thursday at 12 a.m., but I guess it may vary by your cable provider, so check your local listings. Anyway, there'll be more about that next week, so see you then! Or, more accurately, see you when I finally get the first episode up, which should be before the next episode, but, yeah.